So why can't we have a modern Judaism? That's really the question. And if we can have a modern Judaism, then what does the Torah mean in that context? So that's sort of the idea of this talk, is to talk about whether on the night of Shavuot, whether we can be receiving a Torah, which is a Torah for our times, and what is the relationship between the Torah that we receive on Shavuot and the Torah that Moses received. So that's just a little introduction. Judith, why don't you tell me what was going on in your head while I was saying the introduction?
There is one Torah. It's the way we understand it may change, but the Torah is not going to change.
Okay, but you know about the history, the Masoretic text, the oral tradition, you know, the P text and all of this kind of stuff, the work that scholars are doing right now. So basically, my understanding of the Torah that we've received is that Torah always begins as an oral Torah. You know, they say that there's the written Torah and the oral Torah, and that at some point when the generations are recognizing that the oral Torah is no longer in people's minds, they no longer have access to it, then at some point somebody says, let's write it down so that we don't lose it. So then that becomes the written Torah, and it goes back and forth. Now, obviously, the Masoretic text that we call the Torah was written down a very long time ago, and we're certainly not updating it. Even the Reform movement, everybody is using the same Torah text. So I'm certainly not advocating here that I'm saying that next year Bethel is going to use a different written Torah, but on some level, there is an evolution that happens, let's just say even in the oral Torah. And basically, the question is, how can we make the transmission from Sinai relevant? Because in each generation, there are changes that happen in that generation. And if we're locked into a Torah that comes from a different time, you know, a lot of the laws in the Torah have to do with people who were farmers or who were agrarian people or shepherds, you know, and all these kinds of things. A lot of the technologies have to do with technologies that are different. So we want to have the Torah be alive and be vibrant. And even commentators like Rashi were saying that the revelation is happening all the time, that we have to see it as if, you know, as we left Egypt, that we left Egypt, and we have to make it relevant. So a lot of our work as Jews is to make it relevant. So you can also just look at what I'm saying as I'm trying to make Shavuot relevant. But on some level, I do believe that, you know, if Moses went up on Mount Sinai, God might say, E equals MC squared. Now, he didn't say that to Moses because E equals MC squared didn't exist at that time. But on some level, that's part of our Torah. So right now, just starting off, I'd like you all just to do a visualization. I want you to imagine that you just left Egypt 45 days ago or so, and you were slaves, you were in slavery, and this leader has led you now, and now you've come on the first day of the month of Sivan, and you're sitting at the base of the mountain, and you know that something is about to happen because you've heard that God is about to give us some important communication. So I want you to just stop and think for a second. If Moses was standing there and you knew that you were about to receive the Torah in a few days, what are the kinds of things that you would want that Torah to do for you in your life? What are the questions that you would want to bring to God that you hope that would come in that transmission? If anybody wants to share anything that's coming up for them, that would be fine.
I don't know. Give me guidance on how to live my life.
Okay. When you say how to live my life, you mean so that you're a good person, or you mean so that you have more blessings? Which are you thinking of?
I guess both.
Okay.
I think
Anybody else?
we've just been through in this visualization, we've just been through a state change. And so I'm trying to get used to this new state of being a free person. And what does that mean? I need help in navigating that, and how to get along with others, how to get along with myself. What are the expectations I should have for myself? There are a lot of questions I would be having.
Anybody else want to share something? Thank you, Helene. So the first part of Revelation is about receiving, about being receptive. We all recognize that God is something greater than us, that this immense thing that we have trouble even describing, that some of us can say, I believe in that, and some of us can't say, I believe in that, but we all recognize that there are things in the world that are greater than ourselves. So the first part about receiving the Torah is to learn how to listen on the inside, how to listen to messages that might be coming down. And so what I'd like to think about is there's a whole technique of active listening, where you really try to make yourself on the inside to be very, very quiet and just open up so that you can hear what you're receiving. So that's the first thing about what we need to do on Shavuot, is to learn how to listen to what God might be telling us.
I'm listening to what you're telling us. Keep going.
All right, let me just all right, so now there are two different stories in Tanakh which are both very interesting about Revelation. In one story, which we read on Shavuot, Moses goes up on the mountain, he comes down, he tells the Jews how to prepare, he gives warnings that the Jews are saying, we want to hear, and they're also saying, we're scared to hear, we're going to die. And it goes back and forth until eventually they say, okay, anybody who touches the mountain is going to die, stay away from the mountain. They have guards, they have everything, and then there's thunder and lightning and a whole big thing, and the top of the mountain is on fire, and there's a midrash that says the mountain is lifted up, and then it's turned upside down, and they're threatening the Jews, and the Jews say, okay, I will do it, I will hear, and all of this drama. And then there's a story about Elijah, who goes up on the mountain, and then there's thunder and lightning, but God's voice is not in the thunder and the lightning. And then there comes a voice of subtle stillness, a kol d'mama daka, and this is, it's translated on the Sephariah as a soft murmuring sound, a still soft voice. And that's where he hears God's voice. So this active listening idea is also consistent with what we hear in our own Tanakh. And it also shows, in a way, the way that Torah evolves. Because, maybe Moses heard the book of Kings 1 when he was sitting on Mount Sinai, but maybe the prophets were hearing something that Moses didn't hear. Just food for thought. So now I want to just switch and talk about, well, what does it mean to receive the Torah? So receiving the Torah is about being a good person, ultimately. Ultimately, the Torah is not the same thing as receiving blessings. Earlier Charlotte said that she wanted to receive some guidance about how to be, and I asked her what she had in mind. Now, ultimately, the Torah is about how can we be the best person that we can be. And I believe that each person is sort of like, how they say that every snowflake has a different pattern and no two snowflakes are alike. And I believe that about people as well. I think that each one of us has a certain way in which we can be the best person that we could possibly be. And the best Seth is not going to be the same as the best Judith, as the best Rabbi Reish, as the best Helene, etc., etc. We each have different capabilities. Each have different gifts. And the world becomes stronger when each of us becomes the best me that I can be. And so when we are receiving the Torah, we need direction, we need guidance. But the guidance that's going to come down for you and the guidance that's going to come down to me are going to be a little bit different.
Obviously.
So I would encourage you, that sounded like a sarcastic comment, Judith. What do you have in mind there?
You just keep going, Seth. I apologize.
Are you
traditional? I'm very traditional. I guess I.
So tell me the traditional point of view. I'd like to hear it. What are the things that I'm saying that would sort of rattle your brain?
I believe that the entire Torah, the written as well as the oral law, was all given. And the oral law didn't become written law until it needed to be, because people wanted to keep track of all of it. And I didn't think whatever was heard was meant for all of us. Now, how it is interpreted from age to age may change, but the law is the law. I mean, we know that when it says don't cook a kid in his mother's milk, didn't actually mean don't have a cheeseburger. That was the way it was brought out. You know, it was no cruelty to the animal. You know, it was, but things are interpreted the way it is. Interpretation can change. What's written in there isn't going to change, at least for me. So,
Okay.
keep going.
We're Zooming, on Shabbat. Who would have thunk, Things change. And like you say, there's interpretation.
All right. No, I mean, I'm not trying to say there's one point of view here. It's fine for people, just like I was saying, we're all snowflakes, so we all have our own ways of looking at things and understanding things, and that's good. So ultimately, but what we want to do is we want to try to make Judaism as relevant as we possibly can. And so that means to align our way of seeing the world with our understanding of Judaism. We come into the world with certain values, with certain ways of understanding things, with understanding right and wrong, and these evolve over our lives. And the Torah comes with a bunch of rules, which I'm certainly not throwing them out, and I'm not saying that they're all completely irrelevant. But I think it's each one of our jobs during our lifetime to try to bring our understanding of right and wrong, given the snowflake form that we have, into the context of the Jewish community, that this is an important thing that we'll do. Otherwise, we sort of have this thing that's on a shelf that's gathering dust, and we have ideas that we can't bring to that thing on the shelf because we're told it's untouchable. So this is really a question about how can we make Yiddishkeit more relevant to ourselves. I certainly am not poo-pooing anything about the collective wisdom of Yiddishkeit, about its history, about the immense power of the written Torah and the oral Torah. And, it takes a lifetime to even begin to scratch the surface of these things. At the same time, there are things that happen in the world that are not recorded in the Torah that I think are very, very important. For example, the way that Freud has unleashed psychology and all of the things that have happened in the last 200 or 300 years around psychology. That's a huge thing right now. Climate change and, the way that the number of people on the planet and Can you guys still see me? I'm getting a message that my internet is okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, you were freezing a little bit.
Okay. So anyway, I mean, my particular path into Yiddishkeit was I started off thinking that there was no relevance for me in Yiddishkeit anymore. By the time I was bar mitzvahed, I was pretty clear that I was not going to be worrying about going to synagogue or anything like that. And I later on, a teacher helped me to integrate these two things. And so that's what I'm trying to encourage all of us to do. When we have things that are really important values or really important ways that we think that that people should be, then that's important for us to bring into our discussions in the synagogue, so that we can understand if people if people have said this before. Rabbi Hoffman tells a great story about when he was a student in rabbinical school, and the teacher asked a question, and he answered it, and the teacher said, "Oh, that's exactly what the Rippah said." I don't know who the Rippah is, but the Rippah was some kind of famous teacher. And Rabbi Hoffman he says, "Well, I don't know who the Rippah is, but that's pretty cool that I came up with the idea that the Rippah said." And the teacher said, "Actually, no, if you didn't know that the Rippah said it, it's not cool, because you have to learn, you have to learn the Talmud, and you have to understand where things come from, and that's really important." Now that's one point of view, but the other point of view is that each one of us has incredible wisdom around how people should be. I mean, we do our best to live a good life, each one of ourselves, and we also try to bring that to our families. And so, okay, thank you, Rabbi. And that's really an important part of Yiddishkeit as well. So,
what was the Rippah?
So I'm guessing it's the Ritzbah, who's a commentator on the Talmud.
Okay, thank you.
So I have questions. I'd like you to think about this as different ways to think about Torah. So the Chafetz Chaim had this idea that if you wanted to influence the world, you had to first work on a smaller scale. And this is where all of the Chafetz Chaim's teachings come from, that people have pictures of Chafetz Chaim because it reminds people not to do Lashon Hara. So the first level is, and so when you're thinking about receiving the Torah this year, you should think about the Torah for you personally. What are the things that you need to learn in your life? The questions that you have related to your happiness, related to your prosperity, related to things that you'd like to accomplish, or even to try to discover who you are. God can speak to us on that level. Then moving out, the next level would be for you and the ones that are close ones in your life, your family, your friends, your community, the people who you spend your time with. Our relationships with people are so important, and it's so difficult to try to have harmony, not just with ourselves, but also with our family. Then the next level would be for your community. These are people who you come in contact with, but you're not necessarily dealing with them. So the Torah can come down on the level of community. Then we have on the level of the citizens of our country. And then we have a Torah that could come down for all the countries. And then for all the people in the world. It could be for all the Jews. It could be for all the people. Then we could have a level of a Torah for the planet, for the whole planet. And then finally we could say the Torah for the cosmos. So these are all different levels that you can think about for this Shavuot. But the main thing is to be thinking about the Torah for this year. This is the year 5780 on the Jewish calendar, and it's the year 2020, And so every year on Shavuot, the Torah is adjusting a little bit. It's switching a little bit. Just like, we have the children, what do they call it? The baby boomers, and then we have Generation X, and we have all these different, I don't even remember all the different things. I think one of the millennials and all these different groupings. It's because there's a recognition that the baby zoomers, okay, there's a recognition that that there is a shift that is happening. And Torah dibra b'lashon b'nei Adam. That's a really important idea. The Torah speaks in the language of human beings. So even though there might be a Torah on the highest heavens, which never changes, certainly we don't believe that God changes from generation to generation. But as people change, and because we want to keep the Torah relevant through those changes, we need to adjust our understanding of the Torah so that it will become relevant to the changes that are happening in society. So let me see where we are here. 8:22. Okay. So the Torah that we hope to receive is going to hopefully give us guidance, not just us as individuals, but also us as communities, as people. Certainly we need some Torah to come down this year because of the political situations where people are really alienated from one another. We don't have a good dialogue going on between the different people in the two parties in America. It just seems like people don't trust each other. We need a lot of guidance on this level. Those are just some examples of some of the things which I hope that we will receive this year on Shavuot. I do have a note here in which, just to give a little history, and this is kind of related to some of the intricacies to navigate between what I'm saying, what Judith was saying. In the 19th century, 18th and 19th century, there was a movement in Germany which led to the Reform movement in Judaism, in which they basically said that the world is shifting so far away from the way that we understand it in the Torah, that basically we need to create an understanding or a halacha which is based on our rational understanding and not based on what we might think that Moses received, because that has become so atavistic, so irrelevant, that we don't need to do that. And so the Reform movement basically said that the most important thing is ethics and using your understanding, your moral compass, to navigate what the future of Judaism is going to be. Since that time, there have been a lot of subtle shifts and changes of ways to try to recapture the Torah and at the same time to bring relevance into the situation. I'm not going to speak for conservative Judaism, but conservative Judaism also allows for certain things that Orthodox Judaism doesn't. They're probably the closest to the Orthodox way of looking at things, but they have a little bit more wiggle room to bring some of the relevance into the situation. Mordechai Kaplan, who created the Reconstructing Judaism movement, started out Orthodox, and then he was conservative, and then he founded what became a movement, and he was basically saying that Judaism is a civilization, that Judaism as a whole evolves, and that it is important for us to create processes that will help us to discover the Torah, for our times. And then finally, I just want to give a plug for the Renewal Movement, which my teacher founded. And basically what he was saying is building on Mordechai Kaplan's point of view, except that he had a great love of Chassidut. And so he was basically saying that in everything we have to look for inspiration from God, that our connection to God as the source of to answer all of our questions is a vital component of that process, that it's not just enough to say human civilization is going to make these decisions, but we also have to have a very strong prayer practice, understanding of Jewish mysticism, and that is the thing that ultimately is going to help us to navigate these questions about what is the Torah. So I think I stuck to my time here. It's 8:27. Any comments or discussion?
Yashikah.
Brooke,
Ishikoff, that was beautiful, Seth.
Very good.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Your words kind of remind me in many ways of the Ramban's comment in his introduction to his commentary, where he talks about the white, the black fire on the white fire, and
it's Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev.
he riffs on that, yeah. But originally it was Nachmanides.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And what's beautiful about that is kind of like what you're talking about. It's mechadesh b'tuvo b'chol yom tamid. It's renewing in God's goodness every day. We have this material of the Torah on the one hand. On the other hand, it maintains its relevance. It keeps up when we create that space in between. The space in between is the space for us to intervene and make those connections. That white fire, that's our space. And it's kind of like what you're saying about every generation taking it and kind of turning it and expanding it, if you will. That's a beautiful meditation. I really thank you so much for your beautiful words of Torah.
Thank you. What was the
you.
Rav Kook line? Hayashan Yitkadash V'ha-chadash Yitkadeh. Is that right? Well, whatever. Okay, I'll look.
The new will be the old will be renewed, and the new will
Yitkadash V'ha-chadash Yitkadesh, maybe, or I'll have to look.
We sanctified, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a happy Shavuot. Have a good night.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you so
Very
much.
good. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
And everybody, remember that tomorrow night, Lou will be teaching us from 8 to 8:30. His topic will be Michael Levin, Hero in Heaven, a story of a young man who made the ultimate sacrifice in his service as a Chayal Boded, as a lone soldier in Israel. So I encourage everyone to check that out tomorrow night. And again, we have all weeks this series going on. And I want to thank again Seth for his beautiful Torah. It's always a pleasure to learn with you, Seth. And so good to see everybody. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.